I found myself quite enjoying a few YA books in the month of May, so it's time to do a couple of rapid reviews. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is going to be two rapid reviews. One, The Shattered Arch by M.H. Woodscourt, and also The Awakening Fire by Cassidy Faline. If you've heard of The Awakening Fire before, that is because it is a SPFBO 9 entrant this year, and I will have timestamps down below if you want to just flick to one review or the other. Before we jump into the reviews, make sure you check in the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord, should you want to come along for the ride. Let's jump right into The Shattered Arch by M.H. Woodscourt. This was a YA epic fantasy filled with an open world, action, and political machinations that kept me piecing the puzzle together for the entire way through. Start by following Prince Jekatesh, who has lived a untouchable, very privileged life until about a year ago, on the day he lost his good friend and mentor in a fight against a powerful demon. Everything changed. Since then, Jekatesh has been in mourning, determined to make his past right and use his position for good. When his cousin Rill comes to his home with dreams filled of demons and magic, it seems that the demon Eresadrill, who took his friend's life, has been broken free of its watery prison once again. I'm going to apologize here and now for any mispronunciations throughout this book. But Rill isn't the only sign of magic seeping back into the land. Kethless, sentinel of the Jade Ark, brings news of its destruction, allowing the demon to walk free amongst them once more. With multiple dark threats looming the land, Jekatesh is now on a mission. Help for them lies in Shinnok. He and his companions will need to find a way in, regardless of the destroyed arch, if they want to put the darkness to rest. Jekatesh and crew will need to traverse dangerous lands, deal with rising political tensions across the borders, and magic coming back into the world, with this prince at the center of it all. While I would argue this is the plot in a nutshell and the main one that we follow throughout the story, there are two more POVs that are worth mentioning. The first is King Aradel of Kaitia. Both he and Prince Jekatesh have ties to Rill as the seer, and another character, Gingy, who is more off-page. Gingy was a storyteller and friend who was lost about a year beforehand, and upon that death, it was thought that magic had gone from the land. And with Rill's dream, it's now being shown that magic is starting to seep back into the land. Another thing that both of these characters share is both King Aradel and Jekatesh have been touched by truth, and I'm sure their stories will intertwine more as the series progresses. The other character worth mentioning here, and probably my favourite character of the book, is Kaja, who was just a lovely storyline to follow. She is a very nervous, socially anxious 16-year-old who relies a lot on her older beau Axel. During a trip to a local town, the two of them are attacked by beasts called the Vashalan. These are ancient dark creatures which have been resurfacing across the land, also putting that magic is back vibe into the story. Kaja has been tasked with finding the prince touched by truth to warn him of the upcoming tensions across the nations. I have to admit that I was quite surprised by this young adult novel. I was not expecting the complex political tensions and also the amount of character development that we got here in The Shattered Arch. In terms of the political tensions, these were built up through time, through all of our POVs as they went through the story. Certain character interactions with different terrains and nations were tense, and the conversations surrounding forgiveness and past grievances were plentiful. One of the lands that Prince Jekatesh goes through is a land called Shing. It was pretty clear that the hurts of the past from this town to where he has come from are absolutely not forgiven for certain generations. Regardless of Jekatesh's father being the one putting a stop to the harmful practices previously running rampant through this land, there were definitely those who still held that grudge. Some of the inhabitants had forgiven the current leadership and were very grateful for the peace, while others had this simmering hatred for the throne because of the past grievances from a past king in that position. Adding to tensions rising is the basically forgotten political landscape of Norva, which is where Kaja is from that I mentioned earlier. This is a cold and barren region which has all but been forgotten. It's not placed on any maps, and it is assumed that anyone who has resided there perished long ago. But this population is ready to rise and show Amantia what they are made of and take back their livelihoods and be placed back on the map. These tensions were quite well built up through the character interactions, in my opinion, and they were also paced well enough that younger audiences could understand the consequences of past actions as the story progressed. Another thing that I thought was executed quite well were the character interactions themselves and the amount of growth that they went through throughout the book. Each of our POVs do have some sort of growth as their story progressed. We have the selfish prince in Prince Jekatesh, who is becoming increasingly frustrated with being coddled and looked after, to the point that he knows he has to stand up and gain trust as a leader, and that is his progression while traveling and being told that, oh no, you don't have to take watch, you can just sleep, we're all good, we don't really know what your capabilities are, and getting to the point of being like, no, I will be taking a watch because this is part of my responsibility too. I'm here, I am part of the team. And that was quite nice to watch unfold. Kaja, on the other side of things, so we've got a 16-year-old socially anxious young girl who really needs to learn to overcome those social anxieties and realize her own self-worth. She has been given this task to traverse across an unknown land and to stop a bloody war before it even comes to pass, and she goes through a tremendous amount of growth to be able to do that. But we do see how those social anxieties play a part within that story. Even the Blood King, who didn't get as much page time, had a thing or two to learn about his past actions and what was important at the end of the day versus what had happened in the past. These learnings felt like a natural progression for our characters in this world, which was quite a feat within the page count that we had here. Sometimes when each character progresses quite quickly throughout a story, it can feel forced and like there is so much development happening for so many people, but I think the author here has done quite a good job of making sure that everyone grows in some way, but it's not overwhelming and it doesn't feel like it's being shoved down our throats. Shattered Arch was a great introduction into an epic new world. It does give the reader a lot of things to unpack and also sets itself up really nicely for both a prequel and a sequel should the author want to go in either direction. After I read this book, I found out that there was a Kickstarter for a prequel, so there is already a prequel in the works for this series. I had a good time with this one, and I will honestly probably pick up either the prequel or whatever comes next because I'm quite interested to see where these characters go and how they continue to grow. What are your thoughts on the Shattered Arc? Have you read this one? Are you going to pick it up? Let me know in the comments down below. We are going to jump to the next review very quickly, and that is going to be The Awakening Fire by Cassidy Faline. The Awakening Fire is also an epic YA fantasy. It was very easy to follow. I would say that this is a political fantasy at the heart of it, and it saw 3 young men vying for the throne to rule them all. In The Awakening Fire, current reigning monarch Lord Rita has had control for too long. Unrest is brewing throughout the country and 3 young men seek the throne. Each player in this game has some form of motive, some of them noble, others based in revenge. A bloody game of lost friendships, backstabbing, and ultimate belief in the ancients is about to unfold. But the kingdom of Ratal may not survive another war. Ganon Terrace, a man seeking to kill the current king and take the throne back for his family. Ganon seeks to break away from under his father's thumb and prove that he can take the throne and bring back honor to the Terrace name. His family's portraits are still hanging on the castle walls. It belongs to him, and he will stop at nothing to take it back, even if that means killing his friends. We then have Hieronymus Purvis, man of the people and believer of the ancients. His loyalty to the old laws and the gods that govern them see him accidentally chosen as a new leader of the people. A position he did not know he wanted until it was thrust upon him and in the palm of his hands. Hero will have to decide where his loyalties lie, with his friend Terrace or with the people of Ratal that he wants to protect so very much. A decision neither part will take lightly. And finally, we have Lamont Renauld. This is the king's choice for the throne. When the king took ill throughout the fight of the castle, Lamont was gifted a signet ring, which would give him the throne by right. Privy to the castle secrets and the answers to why the country was run a certain way, Lamont will need to fight for his life and his throne against a people who wish to see him dead. These three men will clash more than just swords to see Ratal becoming great once more. The Awakening Fire was an interesting read because it was so simple in premise but then executed quite well, in my opinion. It was overall a very enjoyable YA novel. It had the right amount of intrigue to keep me entertained while keeping that plotline pretty simple to grasp for younger audiences. Each of our three main characters have an obvious motivation for the throne, which keeps it nice and simple. But the different beliefs surrounding leadership brought about the conflict for the novel, which in turn led to extreme consequences as we went through. It was fun, maybe fun's not the right word, but we'll go with it, to see the friendship between two of our characters really just turn on its head when push came to shove, and they had to put the throne down to one individual when both of them thought that it should be theirs by right. That being said, each character played well into a known and loved fantasy trope, giving the story a familiar and classic fantasy feeling. Another thing I will say was done well for this book is the pacing. Each time I picked it up, I would breeze through 100 pages and not want to put it down. The action and intrigue kept this book interesting, while the snappy and easy to read prose gave it an almost addictive feeling as I was actually reading the book. I would have absolutely loved a book like this falling into my hands when I was in high school, or even that weird middle age coming into high school would have been a really good read. The storytelling style allowed me to be immersed with our surroundings, and while I personally didn't root for any character in particular, I was interested in the outcome that would come by the end of the book. Faylene has also done a really good job of building up a extremely unlikable character that had stakes to the throne but didn't seek the crown itself. This storyline is separate from our three POVs, but it does tie the three together out of pure motivation to keep his disgusting and questionable motivations to himself. This character was Lord Kiad. He was awful and just motivated by lust, violence, and an ability to take what he wanted, when he wanted, and from who he wanted. It made me actively hate him whenever he was on the page. Now, I will say, check your trigger warnings around this particular character. Lord Kiad was sexually abusive to young men, so that can be triggering to people. So maybe if you're going to pick this one up, do check those trigger warnings if that is something that you will be affected by, because it was quite graphic for a YA novel, in my opinion. I will say that outside of Kiad, I did not feel strongly one way or the other towards any of our other characters. Some felt like placeholders to move storylines along without having a real role in the overarching plot itself. The main characters, while they had clear motivations, felt somewhat two-dimensional, and I didn't see much outside of their current goal giving them any sort of personality that I could relate to. There were a couple of side characters that I would like to know more about, and I hope that we do see them in future installments. That being said, I am not a character-driven reader, admittedly. It's not something that will make or break a book for me. If the character work is a little bit lacking, in my opinion, then I'm more likely to go for plot and world building when I read a book. So these things don't tend to bother me as much personally, but it is worth mentioning for the readers out there who love to get invested in the people in the book. This is another one that I had quite a good time with. I'm very impressed at the prose and the accessibility of a book which is quite dark in the YA sphere, and I think this one has a lot of potential. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where this story goes once the ancients rise once more. That was The Awakening Fire by Cassidy Faylene. This one is an entrant into SPFBO 9 this year. What do you think? You're going to pick this one up? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content of these short form rapid reviews, give it one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will. I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.